On today's episode of Accountant Showcase, we have with us Ron Baker. Ron's going to be sharing his story of how he all got started and where he is now. And Ron, thank you so much for taking time out today. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Chris. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I guess I knew I wanted to be a CPA in the eighth grade. I know, Bob Newhart was also a CPA, and he said no kid plays CPA. They play fireman, policeman, whatever. But I guess I was playing CPA in the eighth grade. And when I got into high school, I had a 2-year accounting program and a very inspiring mentor, accounting instructor, who was wonderful. I mean, he brought in CPAs into the classroom that spoke to us about what they did every day, and not just public accountants, but also practicing industry and things like that. He also taught us how to do taxes. So in high school, I ran a tax clinic in the accounting classroom, and kids would come in during lunch with all their W-2s. I'd file their return. They'd slip me a 20, or whatever. And then I started an accounting practice in high school, and I was doing tax returns and my dad's books and a bunch of his friends, because my dad was a small businessman. I was even defending audits at the age of 17 and 18. Didn't even know if it was legal. Still don't know if it was legal, but they signed the power of attorney and the IRS let me in. So I just knew I wanted to be a CPA. When I graduated from college, I went into the Big Eight at Pete Mark Mitchell back then in San Francisco. And then I stayed there 2.5 years and then started my own firm. And that's when my world was upended. So I'll stop there.
Now, you said something that resonated with me. You were impacted in the eighth grade. I don't feel that level of of recruitment, or even in high schools, is going on anymore. Do you find that? Obviously it worked with you, but do you find that? Do you feel the same way? Like, are firms and working together and focusing on that middle school, high school level anymore?
No, I don't think we do a good enough job, and this is not the AICPA's fault, and it's not Cal CPA's fault or the state society's fault. It's our fault. We need to get out into these classrooms as CPAs, whether you're in industry, government, academia, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Get out and talk to these kids, because I tell you, Chris, they have a warped view of what it is we do.
Yeah.
There's a very scary statistic that Barry Melanson threw out once that said, if a kid takes a high school bookkeeping course or accounting course, they're less likely to major in accounting, because they get all these warped views about, oh, it's just green eye shade in the back room adding up numbers on a 10 key or on a computer or whatever. And they have no idea that what we're really doing is we're kind of like financial psychiatrists. We deal with human drama. We deal with humans. We're here to help people. We focus on the finances, obviously, but that's a big part of their life. Just like a doctor focuses on keeping us healthy. So I put the onus on us, and I try and speak to as many high school students as I can, because they come up to me afterwards, not all of them, maybe 10% of them, 5% of them, but that's okay. In a class of 30, that's a couple people. And they say, wow, I never knew what it was that a CPA really did on a daily basis. And so I think we need to get out there more.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And speaking with clients, literally, if you have 100 calls, there's 0 or 1 firm that's doing any type of local recruiting. And I mention it on most of them because it needs to be a collective effort to let folks know that the accounting industry, it's not just, I think of the guy with the green visor, that's so funny. It's not that. You
It's
can
not.
be a CFO. I'm in New York City. You could be CFO of the, what's a good, Yankees.
Yeah.
You
You know,
can be in
at one-
entertainment.
At one point, the AICPA, to their credit, did release a video that you could show to. It was designed for high school students and college students, I think. And I actually used it a couple times because it was a good like 5 minute video, and it showed a CPA in the FBI packing the gun. It showed, some sports team. I don't know if it was the Yankees or the Mets or some football team or whatever, but and it kind of profiled these people, and it just showed you the variety. It just because CPA opens so many doors to other things besides just public accounting. So yeah, people, the high school kids just don't understand it. I'm not even sure college students get it, but high school students definitely don't think about it.
Right. And doing this series, it's most of the folks that got into the industry, it was an impact at some point in their life. I think of the few dozen I've done, there was one instance where it was like started CP, like was born a CPA, and the whole family were CPAs. So it's rare. So there needs to be a lot of exposure for sure. And you yourself, right? You started in the Big Four, and then you went on for the last couple of decades to start VeraSage. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and this is the transformation that blew up after I left the big eight accounting firm that I was in and started my own firm. And of course, as you know, when you start your own firm, you're wearing all the hats. You're the marketing guy, you're the pricer, you're the customer relationship, you're the janitor, you're everything. And I had a partner, and within the first year, I realized that the billable hour, billing people in arrears, was kind of a crappy customer experience. And at the time, I was obsessed with studying what was back then called total quality service, which today we would call customer experience. But back
Yeah.
then it was known as TQS because it was trying to differentiate from TQM. Rather than focusing on quality internally, it focused on service externally to the customer. And I was studying Disney and FedEx and Lexus and Neiman Marcus and Nordstrom, LLB, and all these great companies that had legendary customer service. And I was reading all these books, and I told my partner, I said, I want to emulate these companies. And this billable hour is getting in our way because people would come in and say, Ron, why didn't you tell me it was going to cost this much? And my only retort, Chris, was I spent the time. I was doing timesheets in high school when I had my own accounting firm all through college, certainly at the big eight. I had an hourly rate, and that's just what I did when I started my firm. So we just decided to improve customer service, we were going to do fixed prices because everything else we buy, we know the price before we buy it. It's a rotten time to find out the customer doesn't like your price after you've done all the work, because then there's nothing you can do about it. You're kind of on your knees begging to get paid whatever they want to pay you. And then it always dents the relationship. It puts a dent in the trust and all of that, if not losing the customer outright. So we started doing this. There was nobody, this is 1989, by the way. There's nobody on the circuit talking about it. There's no books on it.
No,
There's no CP courses on it. And we
no.
did it. We made every mistake in the book, every area you could think of.
That's
And
good.
but we
Tell you what.
stuck with it because the customers loved it. And after we got a little bit better at it, I realized, well, if we're not pricing by time, we don't have to keep timesheets. So we got rid of the timesheets, and our team members loved that. And this was all in 1989. And then I got so excited about this, I started teaching this to my colleagues at California Society of CPAs and other states. And then my whole life changed.
Yeah. No, I agree. I've been so I'm not an accountant, but I do sales and marketing. I've been doing it for 18 years, and my the whole structure is pay for performance, right? And so reverse that, and now think about from the client side, you have these options, right? And so if you're going to be able to have this package, you're going to pay this amount, right? And so the same thing is, but working in sales is that if you do this good of a job, you get this amount, and so everything is up front, and it's easily attainable goals. You have full transparency. Everyone knows what they're going to get, and everyone will work towards the same common goal. So yeah, I agree, because if you do hourly rate, and you need those extra hours, you're going to slow down on a project.
Or find
And
more things to do that
yeah,
don't really add value. Yeah, it's a really warped system, and it's over 100 years old. It started in the legal world, and I have no idea why we're so attached to it. I mean, the
yeah,
world has changed.
yeah,
We need to move on. So,
yeah,
yeah.
agree. And so and going off that, the profession as a whole, I mean, I used to spend, for example, talking about remote work as a concept, and that not really part of my job, but in order to work with offshore staff, they're not going to be in the office anytime soon, so you got to work remotely.
Right.
So, and this is 5 years ago. Circle back, last 2 years, I no longer do that, right? And so when folks were forced into this remote virtual environment, realizing, hey, we can do it. I think the profession has changed rapidly. I think it's changed for the good, and I think it's going to continue. What are your thoughts?
I agree. I mean, COVID really taught us that we can, do work anywhere. I mean, geez, we're knowledge workers. We work with our minds. We don't go into a factory and work to the rhythms and cadences of an assembly line. The old joke used to bring your coffee to the office. Well, now the joke is you bring your office to the coffee. We can sit in a Starbucks and be completely productive for a
Yeah,
full day. I mean, J.K. Rowling wrote one of the Harry Potter books sitting in a coffee shop. We work with our minds, not our hands. So I think the big trend going forward on this remote work is going to be what they call a results only work environment. There was Jody Thompson and Kaylee Resler wrote a great book called Why Work Sucks and What to Do About It. And they were two ladies who worked at Best Buy who implemented the ROWE, stands for results only work environment. And their shtick is basically, look, you don't manage the worker, you manage the work. So no mandatory meetings and just, but we're going to hold you accountable for results, not inputs, not presenteeism, not the number of hours you lie on your timesheet. We're going to hold you accountable for actually producing a result. And whether you're remote, virtual, following the Grateful Dead around the country, on tour, the last of the Grateful Dead, doesn't matter as long as you get your work done. And that's the type of environment we should be in as knowledge workers.
I think the profession is definitely going through a whole paradigm shift with mindset, right? Because you're right. When I living in New York and working in Long Island, it's guaranteed 2 hour commute every day.
Right,
And
right.
and it started ballooning to 3 hours and 4 hours. And I was like, life has to be better than this. It
Yes,
has to be. So I had
brutal.
to change my mindset right there. And then I work in this position and my office, albeit it's a long way in India. So you have to get processes, discipline, and it's not easy, but when you have the right mindset, I mean, I'll never go back to an office. And I feel that that's also happening in the industry is that, folks are open-minded and looking at all the options rather than just tunnel vision, because there's so many tools, resources out there that we're always just kind of folks are apprehensive to take on anything new. And it's just like now I feel that they're really excited to get something new implemented. Uh,
Chris, I know it's a cliche to say change is hard, but I think one of the reasons change is hard is because unlearning is hard. We all walk around with these models or these theories of how the world works. And when things change, when circumstances change, we have to unlearn so we can make room for the new. And I'll tell you that unlearning, I think as you get older, gets harder. There's a great video, by the way. You should watch it. Maybe put it in the show notes. Real easy to find. Just Google the backwards bicycle. And it's an amazing 7-minute video that will just blow your mind about how our brain works and how it deals with change. It's a very
see
inspirational
that.
video.
And so, um, before we wrap up today, I appreciate you sharing some insight into this, into how you evolved within the accounting profession. But outside of work, what does Ron like to do for fun?
I like to travel. And of course, pre-COVID, I was doing over 200 days a year on the road, and that took me to many different countries, spreading, the message of value pricing and business model innovation and knowledge economy and all those types of topics. And so that was really great to be able to travel and visit new countries and, experience the food and the culture and all that. I love to read, so I'm a big reader, and I'm kind of a political junkie, so stay on top of that. So election years are kind of like, the playoffs and the Super Bowl, depending on
Uh-huh.
if it's midterm or presidential. Um, and then I do a radio show with my co-host Ed Kless, who works at Sage, the accounting software company. And we've been doing this show for coming up on, it's going to be 9 years next July. And we've done over 420 episodes. And it's just been a blast. It's a live show once a week, and then it drops to podcast. It's called The Soul of Enterprise Business and the Knowledge Economy. So we take on all these topics. We've interviewed the Jody Thompson from Rowe, from Best Buy, and we talk about all sorts of things like blowing up the annual performance appraisal, getting rid of the timesheet, value pricing, marketing, all of those topics with guests and business authors and economists. And so that's a pure labor of love. I absolutely love doing that radio show.
Yeah, I could tell. No, you gotta love what you do. You know what I mean? And so, when you're passionate about it, people see that and people follow and listen. And so that's great. Yeah, no, the travel aspect too is key, right? This is a gigantic planet. And I remember when I went to India and I thought it would
Mm,
be, a cakewalk per se, because I'm from New York, and holy cow, life-changing experience of what things we take for granted on a day-to-day basis aren't
sure.
there, and they don't need it. And I'm realizing, actually, I don't need to always worry about, ice cubes and cold water, just such small things. But
Right, right.
there's so much more out there. I agree. Travel's great.
It is.
Um,
I haven't been to India yet, but I did go to China, and wow, that's mind blowing to walk around Beijing. It's incredible.
exactly. Exactly. Well, Ron, thanks again for taking some time out and speaking with us and sharing some insight. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, if people want to get a hold of me, they can find me on
Yeah,
LinkedIn. I'm one of the influence bloggers, and I'm also on Twitter at Ronald Baker. And the radio show is thesoulofenterprise.com.
perfect. Awesome. Ron, thanks again. For now, take care.
Thank you, Chris.